There's a lot of empty seats. Come help yourself. Don't be shy. We're all family. So yeah, take a seat, and I want to say welcome to this DNewTech. This is our 11th one. So November will be our anniversary for our first one. So I want to say thank you for all you guys participating. It really does help out. I think that we're all engaged with what's going on in Detroit, and I think that with us all networking, we can also probably participate in each other's effort in becoming the next great startup. With that, I also want to say, well, first give a big applause to our sponsors, because these are the guys and companies that are really helping us out. I want to give a word out to Blue Water Angels out in Midland, Michigan. They are a capital group. Their motto is Capital with Connections. We have Wisdom U, which is usually Maria's here. Helping out. She's also, their motto is turn your ideas into business, and you also get your business funded as well. Then we have the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. It's a big group out in downtown Detroit. They're power for a new economy. We got Quicken Loans, our other home when we're not here. Given those groups, Jack, Schlinker, they really do help us out in regards to giving us a place at home. So, there's going to be times that we'll be out there as well. We have Mentor Note, which is my company. It's an electronic record for psychiatry. We have Tex Ripple. Hans is not here. He's actually over in Grand Rapids. So I'm being told to slide over behind the podium. And so anyway, we're going to be using their voting system to kind of vote on best pitch tonight. We normally do that every night. We started that last week when Tex became one of our sponsors. And then TechTown. A huge applause to TechTown, giving us a host. And we're also, I think I can say probably a few of us are graduates of TechTown. I'm one of them. And normally we have, I can't remember my partner in crime. Who's normally doing the Milton. He's actually on the Rotary now. He's also a semi-finalist for the Acceleration Mission coming up on November 14th out in Ann Arbor. This is the second year. He won $25,000 last year for his company. So he's doing a lot of good things with that. So with that, I also wanted to let you guys know that we are going to be doing probably our first anniversary DNewTech, probably during the entrepreneur, I think it's the Global Entrepreneur Week, which is starting November 14th. So I'll let you guys know that. So let me go ahead and get into it. I want to say thank you to Pavan here today. We have a very great speaker of ours for tonight. And as you know, our agenda is usually we have a guest speaker, who will be talking for about 15-20 minutes, and afterward you have 5 minutes to ask them with questions. And then afterward we start with our start company, entrepreneurs. Each of them will get 5 minutes to pitch and then 5 minutes for Q&A. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Pavan. He's the managing director of Pieris Capital and recently wrapped up a 2-year appointment as the entrepreneur in resident at Lawrence Tech University. He's also the CEO of MD Software Company. I also just quickly say that he is currently active as either a founding member or a financial advisor to companies in the financial services, healthcare, which is mine, manufacturing technology, and social media realm. He has coached award-winning companies in the GL2 business plan competition and a board member of the MIT Enterprise, which I know Milton is participating in as well. So I want to give great pleasure to introduce you to Pavan, and everyone can give him a little
Thanks, Sam, for inviting me. It's actually really nice to be back at TechTown. I've been here several times, and it's actually great to see a room full of people. So.
We're going to pull up this slides, and as soon as I can get it here. The only problem is we don't have this remote working. TechTown ran out of batteries. They ran out of budget. They couldn't buy batteries. All yours.
So am I supposed to stand here? I have to move around.
Anywhere there.
Okay, move around.
If you can see light in your eyes, that's good.
Okay. All right. So when Pavan invited me to talk here, and we say about 15 minutes, what I decided was there's a presentation that I do that's a little bit more involved on raising capital, because that's also a big question in entrepreneurs' minds is what's the best way to go about doing that. And I kind of just said, maybe what I should just draw out is some important highlights of that presentation and just talk about that. So that's really what I tried to do here. And it's actually probably a little bit more than 10, less than 10, but 10 is a nice round number. So my objectives for today are, first of all, that this be useful to everyone over here, mainly among my people. The second thing is that we have an interactive conversation, because it's very hard to be just one way. So any point in time, if you have a question, I know we have Q&A at the end, but if you feel there's a compelling thing to just kind of pipe up with, just feel free. I think that would be great. And then I want to learn something from the group as well. So that can only happen if we have a conversation. So hopefully we'll do that. So the first thing I want to start with is, what's the most important question when you want to raise capital? And there's a lot of things that went through my mind. But the first thing that came was glaring was, do I want partners? And if you want money from the outside, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, do you want someone who's going to bring that money to you, be a financial partner? Now that's different from being a team, because you obviously want a team, but a team is part of that journey. But usually capital that you're bringing from the outside is not necessarily going to be part of the team. If it ends up being part of the team, that's great, but that's usually founder capital. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So, having said that, what is capital? Capital is nothing but an advance against the future profits of a company. And that's the key element that often gets forgotten, often gets kind of set aside in the excitement of either new markets, new opportunities, cool technology, what have you. But that's the most important thing. And if it's not capital against profits, it's something else, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But anything that needs to be invested in, if it's an investment, it has to be against something that gets back. And that brings us to the next piece of it, which is, what are investors looking for? And this is also another key question, and I'll often not necessarily capture in documents. So the first thing is liquidity, which is the money back. And people won't necessarily mention this, but how many of you have heard of the term exit event? What do they drill, right? Business plan. You got to put this exit event in there. How are you going to exit? That's that liquidity. How am I going to get my money back? And then, of course, everybody knows that there's a growth and a return. So that's the other piece of it. And then the last thing people are looking for, investors look for low risk. As entrepreneurs, we're kind of all excited about the new company, we're going to conquer the world. But when you ask someone to put money into your company, they're basically going to say, how are you going to lose my money? Before you grow it, what are you doing to keep it safe? And one of the first things that you can help address that in things like your business plan or whatever it is that you're presenting to investors, how are you going to use the money? Because it's in the how the money is used or allocation of capital that often that risk element gets answered very, very quickly. Simple thing. If you're going to spend a whole bunch of it on external services like marketing and labor and things like that, there's nothing to show on the balance sheet or in company assets. And so that's a very high risk investment. Most early stage startups, by definition, tend to be that. So what is risk? The possibility of losing money. There's all kinds of definitions in the financial world relative to volatility and this and that, but really when an investor is looking at risk, that's really what they're looking for, is how am I going to potentially lose money in this deal? And so, where does risk come from? Not knowing everything you need to know. And if you look at everything that is asked for in a business plan, that is to give the investor the insight into everything they need to know. So if you look at what your differentiators are, that's another insight into the market. If you look at the competitive analysis, that's another insight into the market that reduces their risk and gives them more knowledge. If you look at the market size, how many customers are potentially going to be buying this product, that is more information. So everything that is there in terms of keeping this discussion going with the investor has to address this piece of not knowing everything there is to know. Any questions so far? Because I'm going to go through these real fast and we're just going to talk. So question for you. This is not a trick question, but there's two options. And this is for everyone in the audience. Option A, I give you $10. Or option B, I flip a coin, and if it's heads, I give you $20, but if it's tails, you get nothing. Who chooses option A? A lot of option A people, right? Okay. No wrong answers. Absolutely no wrong answers. What if I change that to 10 million and 20 million? And who chooses option B? That could go risk 10 million. Anybody choosing option B now? You still choose option B. All right. So, what if I raise it to 100 million and 200 million? Still option B? All right. $1 billion and $2 billion. So you're just going to go for it. Okay.
You get $2 billion.
No. 1 billion or 20 billion. 1 billion or 2 billion. I'm just multiplying all the numbers. So it's 10 million.
Option A, you lose. Option A, you lose.
Option A, you get the point. And I just give you the money, you walk away.
Oh, you're giving it to me.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Option A is guaranteed money. Now we're having some fun, right? So who goes with option B? Very few people, once it starts getting beyond a certain number, because you're already starting to think, oh, that's the bird in the hand. You're going to go with option B?
Tell me about the coin.
It's just a regular coin. It's a simple coin.
Do I get to flip?
You give me the coin.
Oh,
And I check it first.
I just roll the coin?
But I check it first. No, we're going like way beyond, but this is just a simple psychological thing. The point is, at some point, everybody wants to guarantee money, right? And basically what you're showing is that speculators like risk, but investors don't. And so we talked a lot, there's like 3 things that we talked about risk, but there's a lot of risk in early investing. Everybody knows that. But it's our job as entrepreneurs to figure out how we can minimize that risk to whatever information, plan, execution plan, milestones, whatever it is that we do, that is the fundamental thing. Because what this shows, and by the way, this is, again, something that's kind of understood. As returns go up, as gain goes up, the incremental pleasure of gain, I mean, you have $1 million, the next million's kind of cool, you have 10 million, the next 10 million is, when you lose $100, the next $100 is more painful, and the next 1,000 after that is even more painful. The pain rapidly goes up as you start losing money. Not as much as the pleasure goes up when you make money. And so, investors who are investing in early stage companies know this, or even if they don't know this, at some point they're going to feel this. Now, most investors that we go after, the angel investors or the venture capital. Venture capital guys are professional investors, completely different animal there. But angel investors are doing this because they don't mind that initial loss, or they're doing it for the excitement or whatever it is. And so, but at some point, it becomes too much. And as entrepreneurs, when we're taking someone's money, that's what we need to understand. And if we have this understanding, and we can mitigate risk by putting that information out in our materials, you have a much better chance of getting funding. Now, how do you reduce risk? By having a well-thought-out business plan, by having a well-thought-out spending plan for the capital, focusing on how you're going to get those profits, what do you need for profits? Sales. So the first thing is, how is that initial investment going to translate itself into profits? And if a business plan or whatever documents you have, however long it is, can capture that effectively, you've just made a big step in being able to get an investor's attention. Any questions so far? 1 billion, 2 billion? So the other question I get is valuation. Now, I don't expect anybody to comment. When I did this little thing, I was like, you can't expect people to know this. This is more of an illustration. This is considered the classic formula for valuation. Anybody here understand this? Good. Not too many, and it doesn't matter. So basically what this is saying is that the present value of any asset or any investment is the sum of the discounted cash flows, the future discounted cash flows. The problem is, when we're dealing with early stage companies, we don't know how many cash flows we're going to get, when they're going to start, what the appropriate discount rate, which captures that risk of the required return, is going to be. And the key thing to take out of here is early valuation is much more an art than it is a science. And the smarter investors will do more to figure out how to mitigate their risk than to chase the return. So the more information they can get to figure out how they're going to protect that investment relative to, is it 5x returns, or is it 6x returns, or 7x returns, we don't necessarily know, is going to be more compelling. So, and finally, the best capital is sales. There's nothing like getting the money yourself and being able to kind of sustainably grow the company. Bootstrapping actually really works well. It actually works surprisingly well in certain high-tech fields like software, where you have low capital needs, and all you need to kind of figure out is how you're going to do that initial ramping up of sales with some pilot customers and things like that. But highly capital intensive companies, probably not that easy, because you need to have that. But whatever model you have, the important thing is, how are we converting investments back into dollars? So this didn't take long. I said I gotta have something to fill this up, and we have a little wall out there that actually has one of my words of the wise. But this kind of captures some of the philosophies that you need to keep in mind. At least I find them very useful when you're dealing in this world of kind of financing and entrepreneurship and so on. So the first thing is, and it's actually out there, which is kind of surprising, anything you do, anything you want to do, if you think you can do it, or you think you can't do it, you're right. So it really is very, very internal. And that's the one thing I want to get out there. I mean, I've put up a bunch of slides here, and if you feel that there's something compelling that doesn't make sense here, follow that till you validate it not to be true. And that's when you stop believing it. But, you know, your personal belief in how something might happen, industries are different, customers are different. You know, there are certain things that are applicable in some industries that might be completely unacceptable in something else. If any insight you have in any particular industry or any particular domain is your knowledge that differentiates you from everybody else. And so I'm a strong believer in this, because what I know, it's very unlikely someone else knows exactly the same thing. And so you really have to go by how your own beliefs. This is a really good one. And the reason it's good is because we spend a lot of time in our business plans, doing 3-year and 5-year performance, and I mean, basically it's just like juggling spreadsheets. I've done it too. Okay, it's just like, hey, let's see, maybe this looks a little bit better. That looks more like a hockey stick, you know? Yeah, the point is, sometimes we just don't know. If we have disruptive technologies, there's no way sometimes you're going to know what the adoption rate is going to be, whether it's going to be this super humongous exponential curve or it's just going to grow, you know. And that is why the important thing about this is, what do we know today that we can do to, again, mitigate risk and things like that, because the more we have today in terms of conserving capital or whatever it is, we're getting that investor's comfort level, the more relaxed we can be about not necessarily being right about our predictions. So the other thing that that's also kind of a that I didn't put here, it's a related kind of concept, is make small bets. Even when you get a large amount of capital, use small amounts of it to validate the bigger picture. So you're taking small risks, and the cost of a risk isn't that high. In fact, I may actually have a slide about that. This is actually another one that's really, really critical. Sales solves everything. And it is actually true in a lot of ways. You can have the messiest company, and if you have a lot of demand and you can generate a bunch of sales, you can usually bring some of the other resources to the table. Of course, you need that commitment to actually change the company. But if you don't have sales, it's very, very hard to do anything. And not having sales makes it very hard for a company to get capital. That's the one I was talking about. You've got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And that's basically just a kind of take small risks. If you find out that things aren't particularly going anywhere, instead of throwing good money after bad, you might as well stop and see if you can refocus. Now, you have to balance this with how do you avoid being scattered. And that's where some long-term planning and some milestone-based validation in the business plan can really help. Where, I've used this not only with myself, asking myself the same questions, but sometimes I've had entrepreneurs come to me and said, well, we have a business plan that calls for a $1.5 million capital raise. And my first question is, okay, well, assuming someone commits that amount of capital, what are you going to do with the first $150,000? And what are you going to learn from that first $150,000 so you still have some powder left in case something doesn't happen? You start thinking in those terms. If you're a small company and you have a bet the company approach, it's a very risky approach. I don't know how many people heard, but Sprint is spending something like $38 billion buying the latest iPhones, 4S, I think is the new one, right? That's pretty risky. If you look at the amount of money Sprint has and they're not being able to generate a bunch of traction, there's a lot of analysts out there that are basically saying that's a very risky move. That's a risky commitment. You know, by the way, they're not going to start getting paid for those till 2014. Good.
What I was thinking when you said that is they may be doing that thinking that if they can't sell those phones, Apple will have such an investment that they might bail them out.
That's a pretty risky thing to expect. I mean, you know, Apple's in it for the money. Apple's, I mean, I don't know how many things Apple discounts, but, you know. And by the way, I mean, that's what makes them a great company. I mean, you know, that Apple's never done anything to be a charity. This is for the cat lovers in the group. I love cats. So this is truly the truth. If you run your business and you start generating value, the capital will come. Because if you don't have time to chase capital, that means you're doing something right. You can't even fun. There's other pieces of it. You know, don't have time, have fun running your company, you know, all that good stuff. But this is true because I've actually heard of situations where successful companies get calls from potential investors saying, hey, you guys need some growth capital, how are you guys, you know, and it's really nice to be in that seat where you can actually say, well, I don't know, you know, what are your terms, you know, let's have lunch next week. I mean, you know, it's a different conversation. And anytime you're on the other side and you're kind of, you know, defensive, it's always hard. So, I don't know how we're doing on time, but
We got another minute if you want. Another minute.
so, got another minute. We got a question.
We can start the quick Q&A right now, guys.
I'm gone, so yeah.
Yeah. In regards to you talking about the sales part, I mean, in regards to your projection, how critical does one investor look at in the first 3 years, first 3 years? I mean, they also ask for a year, first 12 months, and then some companies point per month. and then they start looking yearly. I know some objections, but what does an investor do?
Well, I mean, I think you'll get different answers for every investor that you talk to, because there isn't any, some investors are very particular about projections. Others are more interested in the big picture story. But here's the thing, right? Anytime you have something that is in the immediate future, you're going to know more than something about, 24 months down the road. And sales is not like the weather where I can say, in December of 2014 is most likely to be cold. Most likely going to be right. Unless global warming completely does, we're probably going to be dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. So, but sales is not like that, right? So how you define, the momentum you generate in the first year is going to define how the performance is going to be in the second year. So you definitely need to have some notion, but it has to be defensible. It has to be something you just didn't put in some numbers and some growth factor in the spreadsheet. Give people back up. Let's say you're doing enterprise sales, and you know that it takes a certain amount of time to do a sales, the sales cycle, right? And then you have a headcount that says, well, how many salespeople do I have on staff by that time? Some metrics that you can defend. That is why, again, risk is not knowing what there is to know. So if you have history, you have information that you can project based on your particular company. Even if it's not the right way to do it, you at least have a starting point. Right.
When making those projections, how aggressive or conservative should you be when approaching investors? Should you try to, go which side of the spectrum should you really be aiming for?
You should believe in it. This is something, if you're investing in it, you got to be your own investor and say, do I believe that? Can I stand and defend those figures? Because, again, if you're too conservative, and you're saying I'm intentionally conservative, people love to do that, conservatively speaking, 1% of the market and things like that. That doesn't mean anything. But if it's believable, and if you have a logical, whatever approach you might use that says, this is why you can defend it, that is much more compelling. And by the way, you can be very aggressive. Take Groupon and Living Social. Those guys are, I think they're less than 3 years old and they're already doing almost $1 billion in revenue. Don't follow it, but numbers are staggering. So some models just are extremely effective.
I mean less like at the risk of looking like you're being too aggressive, but for example, you have a really aggressive sales forecast 3 years out and you don't hit it because you were intentionally very aggressive with it. How does that look to an investor versus being too conservative?
Because you were intentionally aggressive. So anything you do intentionally, which is not what you believed in the first place.
Well, intentionally or not, if it was an aggressive forecast, in terms of how, I guess, angry investors are with you not hitting those milestones.
So here's the thing: if it's something you believe in, it's not aggressive.
Right.
If it's something that you feel is the right way, take a look at Facebook, right? They've got their growth chart on their website. And if you have something that you can model based on some numbers that go by those, by them being an example, I'm not saying that, it might be 100% exactly like that. That's an exponential growth model. And they've been doing some amazing numbers. Now, they're reaching the saturation point to somewhat. Because they have 700 million users or something, and our population is 6 billion. And not many people beyond 1.23 billion use the internet. So they're saturating to a really high percentage of internet users. But, so if you believe in it, if you have some fundamental knowledge or insight into customer behavior that you can say, that's why I'm defending those figures. It's not aggressive anymore. It's insightful. And that can get an investor excited. But at the same time, on the downside, so that's your upside. Right? So the upside potential is all fine and dandy, but what are you doing on the downside to protect their investment is also the important question that you have to ask.
Right, so how much do things really change within an organization once you take on that first round of capital versus before that?
So a lot of it depends upon who you take it from and what the relationship is. So There's different types of investors. You know, you have the angel investors who might be doing it for a certain reason. Some of it might be personal. You know, they just like the space. And they might get a little bit more involved in the company, the operating side, but they might not get involved so much in the governance, who's on the board, and so on. But pretty much by the time you start taking institutional money or venture capital, that kind of thing, you're starting to look at some very specific guidelines on what they expect. Very often, founders have this gripe that the VC will come in and say, we want a professional CEO to take this from here. And, you know, depending upon your personality and whether you should be the right person, it might be the right thing to do, who knows. But by the time you get institutional money, it's going to be pretty different, and it's going to start looking different. But it might start with, there's very sophisticated angels that might have a very set idea of how they want the company to run. And those are the discussions you need to have when you talk. That's why the first question, do I want partners? Because when you start getting someone else's money, there's an obligation. It's not just financial, but there's also how you come across.
We got time for one more question.
At what point in your search for funding, whether it's friends or family, angel or VCs, do you work with an attorney to develop the private placement materials so that you can be more successful in approaching those groups?
So you should work with an attorney right from the beginning, even when you're working with friends and family, because friends and family is one of those things where the objective of investing most of the time is to support rather than get an expected return or something. They're doing it because they want you to succeed. But what happens often is we kind of lose sight of that, and there's more than one instance of where you take some money from someone who can't afford to lose it. A lot of the early stage investments very early on are speculation more than anything else. So there's a very good chance that the money's going to go. So you've got to be real careful. The other thing is also, if you start with friends and family and you have an expectation that you're going to go down this path with institutional or professional investors coming down, you've got to make sure that they get protected, because often the early investors essentially don't, if they don't have the staying power, it's very possible that their rights and needs aren't necessarily going to be that important. So it's always good. I mean, you're dealing with taking money. It's always good to have things in writing.
You have to be careful too if you're taking investors from other states. So
there's all kinds of things, and that's why you need to have a good attorney who can guide you through that whole process. Now, relative to the private placement memorandum, that's something that when you're talking to an investor, you're going to kind of decide. Sometimes an investor is just going to give you a term sheet, and they might just invest. There's no PPM really involved, so the conversations can go in many different ways.
Okay. Pavan, you going to stick around just a little bit? I know you guys.
But I'll stick with it.
Yep, okay. And then, so if you guys have questions, hopefully they'll be around to ask questions further. Thanks, Pavan. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started with the first presenter. And, the people in the back, you don't have to guard the pizza, it's all gone now. So you guys can all sit down. There's a bunch of seats around here. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first company is called FetchNote, and there's actually, I think I was told there's two presenters, and I only got bio from one person. So your co-partner is going to have to present themselves. So basically, I got Chase here, and this is Chase, and that's Alex, right? Got it? Okay, so Chase is basically a youth, was a student, Ross School of Business, and he's going to do green business informatics, and he's a hacker, so I'm going to touch it. I don't know if you guys touch it. You guys set? Yeah, actually, no. That's why you have both of you. No. You got the 5 minutes, and go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Alex Schiff, and I guess my bio is
Give me the pitch with the
I'm a
office.
student, junior, and I guess right here the bio on Chase, and we're from FetchNote. So before we say what we're doing, I want to talk about the problem that we're solving, and that's how to capture, organize, and manage information. And that's anything from tasks, ideas, things that you want to remember to check out later, all these things that are floating around in your brain that you need to get down somewhere and into your workflow to take care of later. And so there's no shortage of ways that we solve that now, and there's notebooks, I used to text things to myself all the time, and there's no shortage of applications that try to solve this problem.
Yeah, and so, there's so many solutions out there. It's started to wonder, why doesn't any of this stuff actually work? It seems like someone would have gotten this right. Over and over, we're hearing from people that they're still looking for solutions. Why doesn't this stuff work? Well, first of all, a lot of things don't give you a great, easy way to stay organized. Things get cluttered, things get messed up, and it ends up looking a lot like that. Next, you have your email inbox. Is that really the best place to stick everything you remember? No, it gets buried amongst tons of other things. Same with text messages and traditional notepad applications. There's no good easy way to get things out of those current places. They just sit there, stagnant. And then a lot of the other current solutions out there right now are just too heavy, they're too clunky. This application, it takes literally 12 steps to add a tag to a note so you can find it later, which seems pretty bad for 2020. And so we have a couple different ways we wanted to solve the different pain points out there. First of all, we want it to be everywhere, because when you remember something, you need to jot something down. You can't be like looking all over the place and saying, oh, I need to get an internet connection, I need to go do this, I need to do that. You just need to be able to get it down right away. I mean, that's why we've been using regular notepads and pencils for so long, because they're right there. But now we have all this cool technology, so why not use that? So, we're going to be on your desktop, we're going to be on the web, mobile phones, and even feature phones, so you can text or call in your notes. The next thing was we wanted to keep things really simple. There's no reason that jotting down a quick, simple note needs to take 12 steps to do what you need to do. And so you'll see here, you can start jotting down a note, and this hierarchical organization is actually generated for you on the fly. And it feels hierarchical, but it's actually associative. So you can have, the breadth of a regular file system you get on your computer. I know probably some of you spend a lot of time dragging and dropping things in little spots. I used to do that too. But this all gets generated for you on the fly just by adding a tag. And now instead of 12 steps to add a tag, it takes 1. So you can stay organized a whole lot easier. Next, we wanted this to be really useful. Anyone can build an application where you can just throw some text up in the cloud and be able to pick it up anywhere. I mean, that's not that hard. There's so many things out there that you can get that do that. We actually want to do things like providing with an at tag. So if I'm in a study group, I can type in this note, and if I add my group, this note actually goes out to all of them and goes on their chemistry and to-do lists so that they can stay organized with it. And in addition to that, we want to give you all kinds of functionality so that you can say, if I have a tag with bugs, I want that thing to get forwarded and synced with the bugs in my bug tracker. If you're using another note service, like Evernote, for example, if it takes 12 steps to do something you want to do in Evernote, you can do it with 1 in ours. We'll let you do that. You can sync with Evernote. So we want to give you all of these avenues to basically get your notes out of one location and get it to where it needs to be.
So just a quick look at the note-taking market solutions out there right now. The leader is Evernote. They have over 12 million users as of August. The other one is Catch Notes, and they have, I couldn't find an active user number, but they sure have a lot of downloads. SpringPad is kind of third place with over 1 million users. And then finally SimpleNote, which has a little bit over 135,000 as of last year. But what I really want to get at is this is a big market. There's a lot of people that are using these types of devices. And only 21% of the people that we surveyed recently call themselves loyal users. So no one's really happy with what they're using. And so next I just want to touch on our revenue model briefly. It's a freemium model. And basically, we give away the apps for free. The mobile apps are going to have ads in them, but that's not going to be our primary source of revenue. We have a subscription plan that has some of the features like texting in your notes, board groups, things of that nature that are designed to get you to convert, rather than dragging you into converting like a lot of other applications.
All right, and so lastly, we'd really like you all guys to sign up. So we made a little link for you on Fetch Notes. We're in closed beta right now, but if you go to that link, exactly that link, then we'll be able to get you signed up. So we'd love for you to go try it out.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
So this way, go ahead, drill the questions.
You don't do use when you cook some of the paper too.
But you know, I think that's probably another. Yeah, that's what I was on.
How many people do you have working right now on development and as far as all of the?
We have 9 people, so us 2 co-founders and then 7 people that are doing 5 developers, 1 designer developer hybrid, and 1 just sole designer.
You're all in, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We just to follow. We work out of that tech art. It's a student accelerator.
I'm just totally, I was fascinated because that when I started that, how come so many programmers?
So many programmers. So Alex isn't a programmer, and we have designers on the programmer, so that leaves 7 programmers. So I do all the web stuff, and then we've got 1 person who does desktop and Android, and then we have 2 other just Android, and then we have 3 people on iPhone. And a lot of this, honestly, I mean, we're working with students, everyone's pretty busy, and you know, none of us are doing this as a full-time job, and so we need to kind of distribute the work. And I mean, 3 people to make a nice mobile app isn't too crazy. So.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What's your beachhead market?
I'm sorry, what?
Your beachhead market, the first market you're going to try to penetrate through.
So a big chunk of our early adopters, and by no means is it all of them, but this is where we've gotten a lot of initial traction, is with people who follow the getting things done system. And that's, I kind of describe it as like the productivity version of Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's like a system that helps you, get better at staying organized and getting things done. And so a lot of the people that signed up for a beta that follow us on Twitter are subscribers to that system. So that's where we've seen a lot of initial traction, but definitely also students, people that are in business, a lot of entrepreneurs as well, a lot of people who are into startups and obviously have a lot of ideas that they're writing down. That's actually like where this kind of generated from, was like, I had no way to like, that I enjoy writing down ideas.
So all this information is going to be hosted and indexed on cloud?
Yeah.
Can you talk about the technology they're using?
Computers. What's that? Yeah, we use computers sometimes.
Sometimes we have people use the computers.
And yeah, no. So, what do you mean, like the?
Like what kind of cloud service you use, or?
Okay. Yeah. So.
You don't want to.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's all actually on the website in other places. Yeah. So our servers run on Linode. This company uses servers. They provide a similar service to like Amazon Web Services, stuff like that. And in terms of actual like stack of technology, we have Tornado. It's a web framework that actually Facebook open sourced. They acquired FriendFeed. FriendFeed started that framework, and it's meant to be very performant. It's meant to scale really well, handle lots of connections at the same time. And so Facebook open sourced that, and that's written in Python, programming language. For database side, instead of going with like SQL or something like that, we went with MongoDB. It's what they call a document-based database. So it's reading notes. I mean, the analogy is perfect, but you can just know the document-based database is work great for notes. And actually, it's what Catch actually uses that as well. We found out, and we do all the standard stuff on the front end. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, all those sorts of things. On the mobile apps, we just do vanilla Android. On iPhone, we actually use something called PhoneGap, which is pretty interesting. The issue with getting iPhone developers to work for you is that not everybody owns a Mac, and Apple wants you to own a Mac to develop for iPhone. And PhoneGap, and the other thing is not everyone knows Objective-C, which is the language they require. Yeah, and so PhoneGap actually lets you use web languages, web technologies to roll an iPhone app. And so it was easier to get developed for. We didn't have to buy any more MacBooks. That's why we chose that. And that about covers it.
What about what you guys do now? Looking for funding capital? You guys?
So we've been bootstrapping up until now. We're definitely going to try to continue to bootstrap. As for what our next steps are, is really just rolling this out to the max number of people possible. We're ready for our beta list. We have, at last check, 1,130 people that signed up for our beta list. We've been doing a lot of marketing campaigning over the summer. When you're a technical co-founder, what else do you have to do?
And so, yeah, so we did a really good job there. And so far we have a little over 100 invites sent out, and I don't know how many so a good percentage of them. But we just sent out like our first like big push of invites over the weekend because we just got the text messaging integrated, so you can text your note, it shows up on the web app. That was like what made it really compelling.
Good job, guys.
Thanks.
I mean, when you're a student and you can spend most of your time, you know you're going to get a degree, and now do this, knowing that might not, it's a risk, you got the best of both worlds, man. That's awesome. That's cool. All right, Roger, do you need
one more?
One more.
Then
The
change.
next one, Oliver. You have Oliver? Great. So Oliver is I would say he's an old-timer here. He's well known. His business is clean emissions, and he's over in Next Energy. And I tell you, he's definitely someone that I definitely look up to in regards to my business plan when I was writing, because he was one of the people that actually spoke into some of my classes. So with that, and that's pretty pressure. With that, let me
Tell back to follow.
Get your presentation up. Here we go.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom. My name again is Oliver Baer.
If you can't see light, you're in the wrong place. There you go.
And I'm with a company called Clean Emission Fluids. We're in the biofuel space, and we're in the clean fleet space. I co-founded the company in 2007. Fleets today are faced with having to deal with a multitude of different fuels, and they also need new emission fluids to comply with the new emissions. It's a challenge to handle these new fluids, to store it, and to get the optimal blend. The two challenges, again, are fuel that goes in the fuel tank, biofuels of different kind, different blends, and also in the emission fluids, which are new in 2010, you need to have new fluids wherever fuel is dispensed. We have a solution which is called FAST. It's a truck stop in a box. You deliver it, it's in sizes from 55 gallons up to 40 feet and 10,000 gallons. It delivers all the fuels, fluids, emission fluids, biofuels that a fleet would need for their trucks. We have our first station running at Next Energy across the street, which Tom had mentioned, thank you. We have Baer as a customer, and we've delivered these stations to them. They go to the fuel island. They are so high-tech, they save Baer money, for example. They came back to us 2 months later, unsolicited, and said, we'd like to give you a purchase order to buy all the fluids for you for the next 2 years. If you just take care of the stations and manage the fuel for us. It's called vendor managed inventory. That about floored us when we got that call. Well, we've been doing this for 2 years now. We've been proving out our model, building our stations, improving this design. And what does it do? It blends any fuel type for any vehicle sequentially as they come up. So one truck, an old truck, might get a high percentage of biofuel. Diesel prices are hovering about $3.80 a gallon. Biofuel prices are going to come down. Let's say it's $3 a gallon. Well, if you do a 50% blend, you're saving half of that. If you've got a brand new truck, you can't put a high blend in, so you have to use a lesser blend. The ability to blend on demand for every single truck right at the pump helps companies save money. This is a photo of our station at Baer, at their facility in Lansing. As I said, our company is revenue producing. We have customers, we're raising money, and we have a residual income stream which helps us support debt. So questions over how is the investment return, which our speaker said earlier on. We make money from selling the equipment. We make money ongoing from selling the fluids. Our margins range from 10 cents a gallon all the way on up to over $1 a gallon. This is a very large market that we're dealing with here. This chart is simply to show that it's growing at over 500% a year. There's 43 billion gallons of diesel fuel consumed in this country annually. Biofuels are forecast to, at a very small percentage, be at 1 billion gallons next year. That number is going to go up and up and up as there are more economic incentives to use biofuels. The emission fluids, again, a $1.3 billion space. The equipment side, for our stations alone, there are 17,000 places immediately in our beachhead market where you can sell these stations to, and that's the private fleet operators that don't currently have fuel on site. There is competition. There's European entrants, they only do one thing, they do the emission fluids. Then there's traditional fuel companies like Dresser, Wayne, and Gilbarco. They have some form of blending, but how we track everything, bring it together, and allow the customer to access the information to continually optimize their fuel spend, that is unique, and we're the only company in the world that is integrating this all together in one solution. This is a team that's going to take this to a $43 million per year company in about 5 years. We have over 100 years experience in the industry, a lot of people involved. We've used a lot of resources like shifting gears with Larry over here, worked for our company for almost a week, I think, and he sees the team that we have that can really help manufacture these stations and take them to market. We're seeking $3 million. We've already got commitments for seed funding, $350,000. We're raising another $600,000, which we have commitments for in seed funding that we're matching with Michigan Pre-Seed. And we are seeking $3 million to take this opportunity nationally and then globally. Right now we're concentrating in Michigan, we're concentrating in Detroit. That'll expand to the Midwest next year, and that'll expand beyond that to the nation. Our projections have us settling at over $737,000 this year, and that's selling 12 units, 12 stations. We currently have 7 booked. We will sell almost 70 stations next year. Our stations range in price from $20,000 to over $100,000. And each of those, like I said, has a residual income component. That'll result in, as I said, in 2015, we'll hit a fuel gallonage of over 30 million gallons just based on that, and 700 stations a year, which are all built in Detroit. Let's recap here. We're solving a renewable energy challenge, and that's how do you cost effectively utilize biofuels, which are being mandated. We're incentivizing that by lowering the fuel price at the pump. We are proven, we have customers, we're revenue producing, and we're out of time, I think.
Give it up to Oliver. Anyone has questions? Go ahead.
Can I walk around?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Right, so Meyer came to you, and he said that you wanted to sell the fuel man stations, that was really the plan set out, that was going forward.
Let's just say it was part of the plan.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was, did we expect Meyer to come back to us and give us a purchase order for the fuels and fluids? No, we did not. It was part of our plan, but not with our alpha customer, Meyer, in 2 months of using our station, coming back to us and saying, here's a PO for the fuel. Yes.
That was the cap.
Yes, sir.
So did I hear you say you started in 07?
Yeah.
And then I saw on your thing you have 2 employees in 11. So you spent the last 4 years just developing this piece of equipment?
We bootstrapped it initially. We pulled retirement out, we put it into building our first station, and we proved out the design. I designed it between the Christmas and the New Year's. We built it in January, installed it in February. I'm an electrical engineer in a previous life, so we were able to do it pretty quickly. But then there was a long gap in how do you take that capital equipment, it's put together with off-the-shelf equipment, and now commercialize it and make it ready for production. That's a big challenge. You deal with an $80,000 piece of equipment. Our margins are well over 50% of that, but that's still $40,000. Where do you pull all the money together to start building these stations? And you don't want to waste $20,000 in a tank here, because then what do you do? Then you're out of money if you make a mistake. So it's a very careful balancing act to scale up production. And I'm a manufacturing engineer, worked in a previous life in the auto industry. We're trying to pull as much cost out of as possible, pull labor out of build, and be able to build 600 to 700 out of one facility per year. That's a challenge. Yes, ma'am.
You're building these at Folks.
Yes, we are. We're using a program that they have called Earn and Learn, because an investor will say, okay, 700 units a year sounds great. How are you going to build it? You're 11 people. Focus Hope has a program. As we scale up, they train workers. We are able to contract Focus Hope, not manage individual workers. They take care of production for us. In that facility, they have space. We have a 60,000 square foot building that we can grow into, which is ideal for a company like ours. We were at TechTown. We were at Next Energy. We outgrew TechTown because our stations are so large. We needed a grassroots manufacturing center. Detroit's got a lot of them, but Focus Hope has labor to connect to. Yes, sir.
So what are your challenges that you're
people and money. That's it.
All right. So then, another question, since that was answered, so.
That's everybody's problem, right?
Right. How can you, are you willing to dive into how you conceive the idea?
It's, the 30-second version is, we became knowledgeable on the new emission standards, needing a new fluid which wasn't currently on the market. And we thought, you know, as an entrepreneur previously, there's a way to make money at that. So we looked at, you know, how do you dispense it, where does it have to go, what's the market, we took our MBA skills and started doing some business plan development. We realized that a distributorship, just simply reselling the fluid, that's not something you can take to an investor and say, would you invest in me to resell something? There's no brand value in that unless you really build a lot of volume. So we put our heads together, engineering heads, and we built a station. And we said, you know what? This is a high-tech station. We've got the patent pending on it. It does blending. It does tracking. It lowers fuel price. It does all kinds of great things that truck fleets need. And then we said, okay, let's build that. Then let's see some investment. Let's go to the back. Yes, sir.
So do truck fleets actually have a register with you? Do they register their trucks with you and they have everything digitally already in the stations? When they pull up, they just put in their truck number and knows exactly what to do, or how does that work?
Ideally, that's the way it should work, and it does for most of our customers, but we don't want to refuse a sale to somebody who says, you know what, I don't need this fancy database system on the back end. Here's my credit card or my fleet card. I'm going to swipe it and get 200 gallons of diesel and biodiesel at this particular blend. We'll still track that. We'll know who it goes to, but they won't be part of what we call our iFast program that tracks all the information, and it has a recommended blended choice. So next time you come back, our goal is to save the customer money and sell a lot of fuel. We can say, you know what? Today the temperature is going up and the cost of this biofuel, this local market is going down. Why don't you use more of that for your truck because you don't have a warranty limit? We're going to suggest this to you and show you how much you can save per gallon. You're going to save 10 cents a gallon by getting this fuel, which you know works because you bought it from us before, or you can take a chance and just get what you want. We think customers want to save money. We'll sell more higher margin fuels that way.
One more question.
All right.
Yes. Can you look at the financials for a second?
Absolutely.
So it looks like you're going to be making money by year 2. So where's all the investment that you're looking? Is that just going on the balance sheet as capital equipment? I mean, the 1.3 million that you're trying to raise?
That's an operating capital play, we think. The investment, use the fund slide from this presentation here, which shows where the funds go, is into sales and marketing. It's in the partner development. How do we sell stations in Texas? We need a partner there to reach the market in Texas, the small to medium-sized fleet operators, and then it's getting the word out there, and it's supporting from a sales standpoint, distributed reps, internal reps. We plan to hire 5 salespeople next year to support a national rollout, focusing initially in Michigan, and then rolling out from there.
So you're going to start returning that by year 2 then?
Yes, it'll break even at the end of year 2.
So you've been breaking it up into equity and debt?
Yes, we expect to have a debt equity split there, yes. And the nice part about the model is the residual income helps to support debt. So an investor might say, oh, what if you don't sell in next year, you don't sell 69 stations? And what if you sell 59? We're not going to hit our revenue margin, but there's still confidence because every station has a residual revenue component from fuel and fluid sales.
So basically it's that cost increase that you're seeing from year 1 to year 2 that you want to finance?
Yes. And then a portion of that, the SG&A will live off of that margin. That would be ideal. Yes, good question. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everybody.
We'll take a break, you guys. So Raji needs to refill, but we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Just kind of